On today's podcast, we have the mastermind behind Paul Craig's descent from light heavyweight to middleweight, a man who Gordon Ramsay asks tips from. That man is Lee Rickards. Lee, how you doing, mate?
I'm not that good with cooking. It's not. So, yeah, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Good, mate. Good, mate. I'm very, very well. Obviously, I wanted to get you on the podcast because you are the man for all things nutrition in regards to sports. And it's a field, an area where I feel is kind of, even though misunderstood, but a lot of people think if they're eating right, then that's enough for sports. And I think you would agree that that's not really the case. There's definitely eating healthy, and that's brilliant. But when we're talking about performance, it's another ball game completely, isn't it?
Yeah, especially the more research is coming out, it's basically identified the more we don't know.
Yeah.
And people just think it just eat healthy when it's not. People can easily underfuel, they can easily overfuel, they can not get enough protein, they can be lacking vitamins and minerals, so it's going to diminish their performance in various areas. Different sports could potentially have more deficiencies than others, depending on, especially, say, endurance sports with a lot of energy and a lot of sweat losses.
Sure.
So it is very individually specific to the person, but also to the sport.
Right, yeah. I'm glad you said that, because it would be awkward if you said, no, you're wrong, Adam. But more about you and your background. How did you how did you get into nutrition? How did this all become your kind of area of expertise?
I've always been interested in nutrition, literally ever since I was a kid. I was a little fatty when I was at school. And not many people know is when I was younger, I did boxing for about 6 years at Brendan Ingall's gym, which is a well-known gym over in Sheffield. And I was a little fatty getting hit pillar to post by the likes like your Samuel Masons, your Kid Galahads, Kyan Booths, even Kel Brook. And I just went losing anyway. I didn't know how to, and there weren't any support there. And I reckon if I was back in those shoes, and there was someone like myself would it be easy to reach out to, I'd have been in a much better place because I'd have basically done what they said and I'd have been all for it.
Yeah.
So that's where I always had a strong interest in nutrition. I was always fit. So then when I left school, went to college, Hillsborough College, then I did a sport coaching course. So BTEC National Diploma in Sport Coaching. And I think that's where some of probably of my good points of way I work with athletes is I'd like to call myself more of a coach, good on a relatable person.
Yeah.
I think I can establish good relationships first and then things develop nutrition-wise. Did that college, it was more sport coaching, but there was a nutrition health module on there. And then my tutor at the time, Vanessa Ellis, who I still bump into now, she was like, look, I think this would be good for you to go to university to do. I think you've got a strong passion for it. So I went that way, did sports science with Mr. Danny Wilson, even though we went to school together as well. At Exfield, so he was a year ahead of me. Did sports science, always had a strong passion for nutrition and all the modules there. So every module there was really keen and interested. I'd soak it all up. Whereas all biomechanics and psychology parts, all falling asleep.
Really?
I found it boring. But you've got to do it, I'm afraid. So then went on to a master's, and to be fair, throughout university I struggled, literally.
Right.
The first year I really struggled. I almost dropped out. Basically because there were only a few with the nutrition modules which I liked and the strength and conditioning ones. The rest I didn't like and I couldn't get my head round, found it hard. But then I just gritted my teeth, got through it. And then as you do dissertation in third year and then your masters and you get more specific, that's more I thought I really enjoy this and start picking it up, and that's where I like, right, I want to become a nutritionist. In my second year at university, I got an internship at Sheffield United Football Club. That was strength and conditioning. So people don't know that I'm a fully accredited strength and conditioning coach and university degree in that as well as nutrition. So I did that my second year at university and there was no nutrition support whatsoever. And because I was keen on it, they had a sports science there and then. Just basically, do you want to do nutrition bit? Yeah. So literally my second year, I was telling all the professional footballers who just got relegated from Premier League that weren't allowed jam on toast. And I was causing riots in the canteen. But literally, I think if you asked all university students into second years, I don't think many of them were working with full-time first-team professional players. So I've got a lot of experience for how long I've been doing it. I turned that role into my own. So I did all the nutrition, lead nutritionist, came head of nutrition at Sheffield United for basically 10 years.
Yeah.
I went to Premier League and then back down and then just come back up. And then a year ago when I fully fledged to go into consultancy. So now with Boxing Science with Danny. I've been doing that for 2 years since we set the Performance Centre up in Sheffield. But I always did a bit of work behind the scenes with him. And then now I'm full-time, basically weight-making nutritionist with Boxing Science and also the Professional Jockeys Association. So I deal with a lot of people who need to make weight.
Yes, you do. So how does it differ dealing with like footballers as opposed to MMA athletes in terms of a logistical kind of standpoint, but as well as like a more personality standpoint? Do you see the big differences there?
Yes, across the spectrum of the team, but you'd still have some individuals in that team who would be quite really into the nutrition and wanting to push themselves, like most MMA and boxers I deal with. So that were really good. There'd always be some outliers. There's either some outliers in boxing and MMA, who just found that bothered about nutrition and they think they can just do what they want and get away with it. The good thing about football is really good team environment and bit of good ethos and good relationships to build there. But more the box, because it is an individual sport and it is part of their sport, they must make weight. So they are really more fully on board to do that. Whereas in football, compared to the other aspects in football, nutrition, it's still going to be important and play a part. But there's so many other variables out of the control of nutrition that it can always get overlooked. And results can mask everything in football. You could give your team the worst pre-match meal in the world and you can go and win 5-0. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, you could have the best pre-match, best lead-up nutrition-wise, and you could get battered 6-0.
Yeah. So it's complete opposites. I think we briefly touched about it in, when we were down in London together and how the stakes are so much higher for MMA athletes and boxers than they are for footballers. And not to say winning the Premiership isn't obviously a huge deal or anything like that, but it's because it's week in, week out with a footballer. If you lose a match, you're going to be thinking in your head, oh, well, I'm going to have this takeaway tonight and it's not going to be a big deal. Or if I win a match, you know what I mean? Whereas for fighters, we know they're 10 weeks and like I said, they've got to make weight. So there's usually no kind of fucking about that. You know what I mean? So it's I find when I've dealt with boxers or MMA fighters, I've dealt with footballers, a lot of the combat athletes are much more like focused for the most part.
Discipline.
Much more disciplined. And that's not to knock footballers or anything. That's just the nature. That's just what it is. And that's just what it is, essentially. So if you were, on the whole, when you're fueling these guys, what is the difference in terms of fuel and the kind of energy management for these guys? Are you giving them more carbs? Are you giving them less carbs to this person or that person? How does it work? Like kind of feeding a football team?
There is actually some similarities in some ways. So, a low day in football, if it's even just a midweek recovery day, if they've had no game but someone just overtrained, then giving them similar macros to maybe a boxer won't be that far off.
Right.
Same, leading up to a game, where we're trying to hit that probably 10 gram per kilogram of carbs always from like the Friday into a game, say a Saturday 3 p.m. Ain't too far different compared to a boxer from a weigh-in to a fight. The only difference there is probably the rehydration strategy from a boxer be a lot more specific and on point compared to a footballer. But even that, you still do have a hydration strategy for each football player there. So they have some of the similarities. The differences will be that probably a higher intensity training day, a Tuesday, which is going to be usually the biggest training day a week. Some players will hit, say, 8,000 meters distance and about 800 to 1,000 meters high speed running, and then probably most teams now will go and have lunch and then get in the gym and do quite a decent lifting session. So if you think of that magnitude of muscle soreness and muscle damage going off there, and you're going to basically need to recover, especially if you really want to push your players, that if not, some of those symptoms of the muscle soreness and fatigue could last up until Friday and potentially 96 hours into it.
Right, yeah.
Into a Saturday. So it's still really important that you do really nail those fundamentals on nutrition to help and recover that. So there's some similarities and differences. In terms of the carbohydrate provision, to say get towards that 10 grams per kilogram, the people fail to realise that there is a lot of GI distress in football as well as potentially boxing.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the carbohydrate options may not be that different either. We're looking at some low fibre, high GI carbohydrates. We don't want the athlete to feel really full and bloated, as if they're running about for 10,000, 12,000 metres in 90 minutes, or they're going to perform in ring or in octagon. So same again, so some similarities there from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really think about that. That's very, very interesting. Just you touched on training there. I want you to ask your opinion. And I was going to ask this question. It popped into my head. But I'm a big proponent on athletes, all athletes, being able to do 2 sessions a day, right? And that's not, I'm not saying they should be doing 2 red sessions a day, but I feel like if you're a full-time athlete, I feel like that is very doable. Do you think that's doable for professional footballers? Because it might be different down in Sheffield Sheffield United where you are, or it might be different in the Premiership. But up here in Scotland, they do 1 session in the morning, and that's pretty much it. So is it feasible for an athlete who's playing week in, week out to be doing 2 sessions a day? Not every day, obviously, but...
Yeah, I think so. Now, that's where a lot of people and a lot of teams will try and almost cram 2 sessions into one. So if you think of managing a team of individuals, if you're the gaffer or the manager, you're trying to keep that team happy. And just because, say, they're a football team doesn't mean they live in that area. So some will travel. If you've bought a player for a lot of money who's going to win your games, but they live 3-4 hours away and their family are settled, they're not going to move close, I'm afraid. So you're still wanting that player to be happy. So that's where a lot of teams will almost try and do a gym session straight after a training session, have lunch at 12 and get them up so they can get home at 3 o'clock to see the kids. Now, is that right or wrong? If I'll let you be the judge of that, I can see both sides of the fence from a professional football from that perspective. But if you think you can get a lot more into your sessions if you do have that break, and even now, a lot of the top players do actually do sessions on their own.
Yeah.
Whether it's with, I'm afraid, a other S&C coach, or even some now will get TTs, which we know ain't the best, better qualified S&C. Some actually getting their own individual nutritionist. I had that under my remit at Sheffield United. And you know what? I'm not going to stop it.
No.
As long as there's a bit of communication there, and you know it's what they're trying to improve themselves. And if that nutritionist is qualified, is on SENR registers, got the proper qualifications, and usually what they're going to be telling them is very similar to me. It's just more one-to-one. So when you're in that remit and you've got 30 people to work with every day, sometimes people slip through the net. So if people want to do that, I'm always for it. So just trying to better themselves.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Just trying to better themselves. And there is I've noticed certainly up here, there's a friction between the clubs and external, maybe S&C coaches. And that's understandable. They don't want their players going to someone who is, like you say, underqualified or doesn't know what they're doing. But because of that, I feel like they're leaving a lot on the table, or they're leaving a lot of kind of performance gains, I suppose, on the table. Because, like I say, I think athletes should be training twice per day. But logistically, like you mentioned, it might not always be possible. There's also the financial aspect of it. I know a club up here in Scotland that a new manager came in and tried to give them 2 days, and they're like, well, are you paying me double the money? Because technically they're working more. So there's the financial aspect as well. And it's also a cultural thing. It's not in the culture of football as of yet on the whole to do 2 a days, where it most definitely is for boxing and MMA. But it's just interesting to see the kind of comparisons between the two. Now, let's get on to the to the big one. How you got Paul Craig, big Paul Craig, to become medium Paul Craig. So when you got the call from us and we said, we're going down to middleweight. Yes, exactly. The shock. Be honest with me. Did you think it was possible?
No.
I knew it.
No, I didn't. Not from the day I had. And that's where I weren't scared to go and get a second opinion and use people. And that's what some people wouldn't do. Now, I'm all for that. The key thing what I did have is I had a great relationship with Paul and yourself, which makes everything so much easier. And that's where people really need to have those good relationships with the athlete and also the support staff around them.
Yeah.
I think there's the relationship between the strength conditioning coach and a nutritionist in your team is absolutely integral and pivotal.
Yeah.
You need everyone singing off the same hymn sheet because to help each other out massively. The SSC drive the performance, we help the adaptation to get even a better performance. So the work hand in hand.
Yeah.
So when that call came, and I was expecting it after I saw the previous fight, and now I'm afraid in the days people's getting a lot bigger, much stronger because of the sports science services, the strength conditioning services, and nutrition. So I was half expecting it. And in an ideal world, if there were a middle category, I think we'd have all probably gone for that.
Yeah.
But I needed time to reflect. As you said it, I didn't jump in and say, yeah, did I?
No.
Like, I need a couple of days to think about this. So I looked at data on what I already had on Paul, got me head maybe in a few bit of research, papers, a few books, and then kind of went back to actually what have we done previously with Paul, what's he like as a person and an athlete, and everyone will tell you he's an absolute brilliant guy, and tell him to put his head through a brick wall, he's putting that head through a brick wall.
Yeah.
And he's very on point and intricate with the smallest detail possible. Like, even in this time of previous camps, I've got about 6 weeks of data of Paul's weight every day. No matter what, I'm just done.
Yeah.
Like, he don't think about it, he knows it. So that, I thought, I fully got his trust. And then when we had a discussion, I'm like, we're going to have to go into some deep waters here.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't going to, won't be straight. Even though on paper, it was one of the best things. Like, we didn't realise how well it went. Like, we couldn't believe it, could we? All the way through. So because of that, I was like, yeah, he's willing to go through a few deep waters. Then we had to look at research, put that on paper, came up with a plan. You went over to UFCPI, got that second opinion, and they're like, actually, you could do it. They weren't fully 100%, but they're like, it is certainly possible. There is some in the UFC who do this and are doing it. So that gave us a bit of confidence from that. Then we got all the other tests, the depths of the RMR, they were all adding up and like, look, we've got pretty good data here. And if we get it right, we can do it. And then we did the key thing there, which I think helped everyone, was the mini cut we did.
Yeah.
Now, when we did that, and that gave, I think, Paul the confidence, which was really important.
Yep.
And then gave us the information we needed to kind of work backwards from that. And then we just were like, right, we need this amount of time. If that's possible, then yeah, let's go. We were all on the same page from the start all the way to the very end.
Yeah, you're right, mate. And I think, like, when we first mentioned it, like, I was thinking, I don't think he can make it. I think, or he'll make it, but he'll make it poorly and it's going to be dangerous. And I was thinking the same as you. I think I was hoping there'd be a 195-pound division, but that just doesn't exist. And then we decided, look, if we're going to do this, we'll do this properly. So we'll go over to the UFCPI as well and get their opinion on it, because you've got to run it by them as well. And once I was expecting to go over there for like basically a little holiday, and for us to be told on the first day, no, there's not a chance. Me and Paul would just enjoy a little holiday in Vegas. But obviously what happened was we went over there and they said, yeah, this is doable. It's going to be tough, but it's doable. So once we got that kind of green light from yourself saying you would be happy to do it with us, and then we're off to the races, weren't we? Like you've mentioned, Paul is the utmost professional He has everything dialed in and on point. And that's why him being a vegetarian doesn't, and we'll probably touch on this as well, doesn't scare me as much as other fighters being vegetarians or vegans or whatever they may be. Because I know where he might lack nutritionally, he'll definitely get his bloods done, he'll pick it up with supplements, and he has everything on point and nailed it. And it's a great testament to Paul, he's able to do that. Don't get me wrong, the test cut was tough. Like, it was a hard test cut, but we were doing it in his bath, in his house, like, without yourself there. You know what I mean? It was like a test cut going bad, essentially, and he still made weight, he still refueled, and he still sparred the next day. So, yeah, I think from that point on, I thought, yeah, we could definitely do this. But even after the test cut, I didn't think we would do it as well as what we did, because I think, hindsight looking back now, it was hard, don't get me wrong, it was hard, but it wasn't that hard. I've seen worse. You know what I mean? I've seen worse weight cuts. And it probably was on the cusp of, like, we wouldn't want to do any more. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I wasn't like, I was never like, oh fuck, he's not making weight here, oh fuck, this is getting dangerous. Like, I never felt like that. And that's probably because, as well, you were there making sure everything was on point. And this is why people need to get someone who's a professional in. I'm a strength and conditioning cuts. I've done a lot of, like, weight cuts, but I'm not a weight cut specialist. I shouldn't be doing that. And I certainly couldn't do that with a big weight cut like Paul Hutt. So that's why you need yourself there to do it all professionally, do it all properly, and do it safely at the end of the day.
It's just that, again, getting that right team around you.
Yeah.
Get everybody off, singing off the same hymn sheet. You almost your coach. It's like, even like with James and Danny up at high level, that was the first time I met them when I came down the week at site. But they were brilliant. But I know you had a good relationship with them. So say if there was anything that possibly we needed to say and do, I knew I had that kind of line of inquiry and relationship. And same vice versa, if possibly they weren't happy with anything, or even going into sessions still absolutely dreadful, then they could have told you and you'd have told me. And that is where those relationships are absolutely pivotal.
Yes.
That you just get everybody singing off the same hymn sheet, who can speak to each other, who aren't insecure or afraid. I've had a lot of like athletes not say anything, and then the coaches contact me saying if he's knackered, he was dreadful in sparring, or vice versa, he's absolutely flying, then let's keep him here.
Yeah.
And that's where those relationships and the communication is absolutely pivotal to performance, in my opinion.
You're 100% right. 100% right. You might not necessarily need to be in a WhatsApp group with the psychologist, with the head coach, with the sparring partners, with all these different people. But you're like, right, having a good relationship, or at least, like you say, you going through me to get to James, or whatever it may be, having that connection there is imperative. Otherwise, it just falls apart. I always look at it like pillars of performance, and like one pillar is the nutritionist, one pillar is the strength conditioning coach, the psychologist, the sparring partner, whatever it may be. But yeah, they need to be working together. And we both know fighters that their coaches may be a bit insecure. And when they're insecure, what they tend to do is they try and take control of everything. And they try and be the nutritionist, they try and be the strength and conditioning coach. And you see it from high-level people as well. I know people in the UFC who their head coach is their strength and conditioning coach as well. 9 times out of 10 for me, that's not going to work, because they're two completely separate jobs. So I completely agree with you there. You need that communication.
They say many people use an S&C and then get nutrition advice for them. There's not many who can do both, I'm afraid. It takes a lot. The other one is our friend Carl and Evans, who's one very brainy guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not far off, so I've got both degrees and accreditations. Other than that, mate, I think we're struggling.
No, you're right. I've been approached many a time by fighters and say, oh, do you do my nutrition as well? And I'm like, absolutely not. No.
And even then, same with me with S&C. I've gave that a long time ago because I just now couldn't do a full job on both. Every now and again, I'll fill in there if needed. I'm not there to do that. If a warm-up needs to change room, or if Danny's on leave and something short there, or the gym if he's required. But literally, the two separate sports science services for a reason. It's why you should get 2 qualified people in those professions to work with you.
100%, mate. Now we're looking at the differences between a cut, right? We talked about Paul's big cut from MMA and boxing. What are the differences there? Do you think there's a benefit to cutting in boxing, or is there not at all? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a lot less. I'm not going to lie. My gut feeling is I think we're seeing the tide to turn a bit in boxing. I think now the big weight cuts in the boxing, so those others saying a bigger weight, just don't seem to be performing that much. Now, you do want to be physically and do have a change between, say, the weigh-in and the fight, but it's a lot less than the MMA, UFC guys.
Yeah.
And if you think of it from a boxing standpoint, you get in the ring for, say, it's a world title fight or a title fight, 12 3-minute rounds. You've got 10, 12, 8-ounce gloves on and getting repeatedly hit in the head for 12 to 30, for basically 36 minutes. That risk of that head trauma, people don't realise it's going to be much more the repeated than MMA. So because of that from the cut, then yeah, absolutely, it should be a lot less than MMA. Now, in terms of MMA, you have your weigh in earlier, so you can rehydrate and refuel. You've probably got another 8 hours. Yeah. Even maybe a bit longer to rehydrate. The UFC do an absolute phenomenal job to try and make sure that is done and done well. So fair play to them. Boxing's got a lot to learn from that. So yes, in my opinion, there is two differences. In boxing, you want to cut a bit, but not too much. In MMA, you can cut a lot more. Same again, I still think there's a line to not cross from that standpoint, and but that can be different on each individual. But yeah, please don't get any MMA weight cutting info and apply it to professional boxing.
No. I think, like you say, it's from a safety perspective, from the repeated head trauma, because a lot of people think, oh, the smaller gloves, that means that there's going to be more trauma with MMA, but what they don't realise is the repeated small blows to the head that are causing a lot of the damage. And plus, if you're getting punched in the face in boxing, you've got nowhere to go. Like, if you're getting punched in the face in MMA, then you could put it against a cage, you can take someone down. That was a beautiful rear naked choke by Lee there. But yeah, so you've got different options there. So yeah, completely agree with you. And you mentioned about the UFC and the kind of systems they have in place. And that's what I was actually mentioning to Paul before you came down. I was like, I'm excited to see what Lee thinks about this, because I knew you would be impressed by this, because it's such a great setup that the UFC used. And it's almost frustrating when you go from the UFC to the boxing events and you see nothing like it. There's like, why do you think that is? And how do you think someone like Matchroom can kind of emulate that and implement it?
I think there's probably more governing bodies in boxing than there is in UFC. So you've got a lot more people for it to go through than the UFC setup. So I think that is one of the main reasons. Now, that's to say it can't happen. A promoter show could easily do it, but same again, it's going to be the cost, the operations and the logistics of it. Like I said to you when I speak to it, I was very impressed with the UFC setup. But from my nutritionist head and working in an operation logistics role at, say, Sheffield United, so I'd go to hotels sometimes before the team and set out food up with chef and so at the back. It's quite difficult. So there's things that go on with there. So you're usually having to contact the hotels a month in advance, send the menu, send it a week, see what they've got, see if they've struggled, then maybe go out and get some stuff. Whereas for the UFC to do that every week, and you haven't just got a team of people who are saying, go, you've got different weights, who need different rehydration, the amount they've lost, different kind of the amount of fuel. Honestly, I was very, very impressed. And them who do it, fair play to them, because it's not an easy job.
No, it must be quite stressful and quite tough. But yeah, it's a great system they've got out there.
They've cracked it.
They have, and they're good on social media as well, promoting how they do it, stuff like that. I'd suggest anyone to give them a follow. The UFC PI as well are very good on social media, showing you how they kind of work it. With that and the social media chat, how do you think that's affected sports nutrition on the whole? Has it been a positive? Because you do see some absolute nonsense out there.
Yeah. I think it works both ways.
Yeah.
I think now nutrition is kind of a lot more sexier than it ever has been.
Yeah.
And almost that's in a good way of promoting it. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people on there who have their personal biases of their own experiences, try and push their own agendas to others who possibly aren't qualified. So I always try and use the term, would you let, if you're going on holiday, would you let the pilot with plane, would you let them drive it just based on the amount of followers they've got on Twitter or Instagram?
Yeah.
Probably not. People wanting to look at some documentation and qualification. So it's the good and the bad. Same again, I'd say the bad one is there's an easy firing line for people. So they can get a lot of the trolls and bad press of it, depending on maybe how they look out at camp.
Yeah.
So, as, for example, we all know like Paddy the Baddy gets a lot of bad press.
Yeah.
Out at camp sometimes they love stuff like that. Whether he's bothered or not, I don't know. But so that could be bad because yes, everybody does go up to their normal homeostasis and where the body's at before.
Yeah.
People who are on weight or in camp don't always look like that. It's not necessarily that safe and healthy to look like that all the time. And same again, this is where a lot of female athletes try and mold themselves to male athletes. So think they can do the weights that male can do. They need to look to have a six-pack to perform and be ripped. And that's not the same again. Social media is, same again, in my opinion, is part to blame. So it's almost like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the same for strength conditioning, I suppose. It's the same for anything just now. There's a lot of information out there which is superb, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, unfortunately. And it's a bit of a minefield to figure out. If you're an athlete, it's a bit of a minefield to figure out what's right and what's wrong.
It's easy to take something out of context.
Yes. Yeah.
So what something might apply in one bit might not apply in another. It's like cards and that. If you're doing some heavy half squats with some athletes, when you're just trying to overload that stimulus and that max strength phase, then someone might have a look at that and think, no, I'm not doing full squats. What's he doing?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that on Twitter and Instagram. Yeah. Same again. I rarely comment on people or anything like that. I just think you don't know the context. So
that's about it.
There's always can be a reason for everything, and there's many ways to get to the same destination.
Agreed, my man. Agreed. Now we're getting on to the juicy stuff. Okay, fan questions. Right, prepare yourself for this, Lee. Biggest tips or best tips, 3 best tips for combat athletes or athletes in general. I'm going to change that. So 3 best tips for athletes in general. Quick fire tips.
Get qualified people behind you, number 1.
Tip 1.
Number 2.
Put you on the spot here.
You have. Well, before I did say I want you to surprise me with some questions. Number 2, get some quick wins. There's a lot of quick wins you could do, like hydration. Are you hydrated every day?
Right.
Like, are you tracking your sweat loss?
Yep.
Are you hitting a daily protein intake? Are you having carbohydrates and hard training sessions? It doesn't have to be complicated. Just try and master some of the basics.
Okay, you've got one more go. You've got one more to go. You need 3 tips of that part. I like your...
One we got. Qualified people, master the basics.
I like your protein before bed one. I think that's a nice little simple tip.
Yeah, it's... Or just... No, I think total protein intake's more important than that. It's just a good way to get to try and improve recovery. Sleep.
Always coming back to sleep, isn't that?
people usually sacrifice sleep, so they'll try and do 2-3 training sessions, or and then they forget actually either shooting themselves in the foot. Because we know sleep plays a pivotal part in appetite regulation, in concentration, in recovery, in basically muscle glycogen resynthesis, muscle protein synthesis, and anabolism. So people always think that sometimes the hardest worker getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. for runs or S&C. Don't get me wrong, sometimes there's a place for it if you're limited, but don't lack the fundamentals.
Yeah, like with that sleep comment there, I know a guy on Instagram who's always posting like 4:30 runs, like just do the run. I'm always thinking in the back of my head, do you really need to do it at 4:30 in the morning? Like, have you went to bed at 7 p.m.? Like, if that's the case, then that's fine, but get your sleep in, guys. Get your blooming sleep in. Right. Biggest buzz from a fight. So when they won and you were just absolutely buzzing, what was it?
Paul takes some beating, you know. I think that's right up there because just how we were all on the same page and all like the same goal, and that, like, on paper, it scared a few people, including myself, who were going to do it. So that's one of the biggest buzzers right up there in terms of like combat sports. I enjoyed when Terry Harper won, when she won a world title at sub-welterweight, moving up those weights. Same again, people almost thinking, moving up those weights, what are you doing, when on paper is what we advise, because that's what the science said from all the assessments. So, and she deserved it for what she went through. So really happy there. Then I'm happy for most kind of, what makes me quite happy is working with a lot of the younger athletes who are just starting off. So everyone always looks at the world titles and the big stages, big events, but if you've got some young athletes who are working with you and they're just starting off, I think that is a really good sense of like gratification I get, is actually when they've come from maybe nothing, no knowledge or education, starting from scratch, and you're just building up those habits for that, hopefully that long-term benefit. So I enjoy that. Same, I've had a lot in football, so I managed to have like 2 pre-promotions in football. They were absolutely fantastic because it's like a reward of a long season and a lot of ups and downs. So I've been quite fortunate to have a lot of successes, but also downfalls.
Oh, of course.
Life and roller coaster, you just got to ride it.
It certainly is, mate. That's a problem. All those highs calling the occasional low, and hopefully.
Yes, there will. And same again, many lows along that.
There will be.
Our way.
I think the game is just
to
have more highs and lows at the end of the day. I think that's the game.
So, yeah.
But just going back to the Paul Craig one, we were buzzing for that one. We were going absolutely ballistic, us and the boys. That was a good one.
Yeah,
that was. I thought maybe he lost at one point. I never think he got caught in a triangle from where I was setting up.
You went to mix it down into over.
I went, it's over. He's had some done, and then boom, he comes back. Anyway, absolutely brilliant. How do you stop a rebound after a fight? So rebounding back in weight. Now you had a fancy word for it. What was your fancy word for it? You said it. What was it called again?
What a brilliant question.
Good question. Eh?
They call it rebound hyperphagia.
There you go.
So it's almost try and make it simple is, as we create fat cells or adipocytes, they never go. They just shrink. And then it's easier to gain fat because your fat cells are already there to expand again. And then once you go over a certain threshold, then you have new fat cells. So when you're going back down, they never go away.
Right, okay.
They just shrink again. So that is kind of the term of it happening. Now, whether this happens physiologically or behavioral, psychologically, there's still a lot of information out there to research what we don't know. What we do know is it is happening. So it is something we need to be mindful of. Now, is it just going to happen after one camp? Then you balloon up? Like, are you going to get a damaged metabolism from heavy dieting for 6, 10, 12 weeks? Personally, I don't think so. I think our bodies are quite robust from that aspect. I think it is the repeatability of it, doing it for a long time, over long years. And also, I think the athlete also has to have some acceptance. We know now called term which called adaptive thermogenesis. So what happens is when you are really big, so say if you're 80 kilograms and you diet down to 72 kilograms, there you to 72 kilograms, you may not have the metabolism of someone who just walks around at 72 kilograms.
Right, okay.
Because our body is very clever and it becomes more efficient. Then same again, possibly when it goes up again, maybe that 80 kilograms, you may not have the metabolism of someone who just sits around at 80 kilograms.
Mm-hmm.
And I try and tell people it's almost like when you're trying to gain weight. When you're trying to gain weight properly, because muscle, it's much harder than losing body fat. People don't realise that. Because if you think your body gets really hot, lacks appetite, you get the sweat, you just almost feel you're just always eating and you're getting sick of food. So your body is very adaptive from that thermogenesis point of view. And that's just what happens. Your body becomes more efficient. So what you've got to almost realise and accept is, yes, I might have to eat a lot less than a normal person would for me. I'm going to have to watch the amount I eat, even in the off-season. I can't go and fight and then straight after go for a 2-week all-inclusive holiday to Mexico, sit on a sunbed, do nothing. I'm going to probably have to do a bit of exercise just to take that into account. I'm always going to probably have to be on the move and think about managing my weight long term.
Was that
in a combat sport?
Sorry, was that a dig at Paul Craig? Because that's where he is just now. Here we go.
Absolutely. Well, he is doing a dig at Paul. We both know he's doing exercise.
Nah, he'll be fine.
He likes it, and he's not stupid. So yeah, getting that acceptance and realizing, and yeah, it could be you're not gonna have much time off. Say not much time off, but almost kind of you are always gonna have to be focused on that weight. But I'm afraid you're a weight making athlete.
Yeah.
So it's part of the process, and you might have 10, 20 years in that career, but focus on it fully. And once you come to acceptance and you know, now I don't want to scare people and thinking I'm just giving people chicken salads all the time and just absolutely starving people. But sometimes you just got to be a bit robust and get on with it.
Yeah, I get 100% right. And like you say, it's part of the sport. It's like being a boxer and getting punched in the face. That's just what you've got to do. If you were to have a fight, right, this is a question from our good friend Reese Step. You had a fight, Danny's gone.
Go on, Reese.
He's moved away to Australia or wherever he went. He goes to, you've got a choice between elite step or enhanced sports performance to train you. Who are you picking and why? Location isn't the thing. You can't bring location into this. Don't cheat.
I'm going for the stock guy. Yeah. I'm going for an performance.
Correct.
And the reason why I'm going for that, Reese, is I think he's got a lot more moves to help me grapple someone and straddle them, as well as box the head off and even kick him.
There you go.
So with that, I think I'd be in a much better place.
Yeah.
But speaking of Reese, yourself, and Danny, that is where I've got really fortunate with 3 good S&C coaches who I have good relationships with. And this is the same with Danny as well, where we're not thinking it's just me and Danny, or Danny, me and no one else. If Danny's got a fight and they've got their own nutritionist and they're good, I'll tell them, stick with them. Same, Danny's not that concerned that like with the S&C coaches. As long as someone's got good qualifications, they're a good person, then I'm all for working for him. I'll try and develop relationships with anybody.
Yeah, 100%. And it is good that me, yourself, Reese, Danny, we're all got good relationships. We all chat with each other. I think it's for the benefit of strength and conditioning. It's for the benefit of our athletes. So I think it's a really, really good thing. Is there any athletes you wouldn't train from maybe a safety perspective or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. Don't get me wrong, if I look on paper and I think it's possible, maybe I've got a good relationship with them and they're needing help. Yeah, of course I will help.
Yeah.
But there's some who say they're just going to do a crazy weight car, the miles out, and I'm thinking, look, I'm almost certain you're not going to make it. I've done it a couple of times before where I'm thinking, yeah, I've got enough time. It's just going to be brutal. Just don't do it. It's going to be unsafe. Same, I think a lot of female athletes.
Yeah.
Now, I do some online programming with a lot, and I won't work with a female athlete now unless I get some baseline tips.
Right, okay.
Now, that's, if they can go and get a DEXA, brilliant, or get some skin folds at least, or even as well as get maybe bilateral impedance, potentially get some blood done. I think that's really important because, and it's not a female athlete's fault, it's because of the lack of research there between males and females. And females want to do similar things to males, and it's just a cascade of crap which is about to unfold and happen.
Yeah.
And it might not necessarily be the actual cut you do or to get them on weight. It could be the aftermath. So, yeah, there's quite a few athletes I have turned away.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Right, this is from, I'm sure you can guess who this question is from, favourite athlete you worked with?
Unfortunately, I've worked with a lot. That engineered Boston by any chance, is it?
No, it's not.
Do you know what? I'm lucky to literally work with some very good athletes. They might not be good at nutrition or follow it, but I've been very fortunate without blowing me on trumpet. I've worked with England football players. I've worked with international players in football, combat sports athletes, world champions and stuff. Honestly, I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of athletes who are good people. So honestly, I can't pick one. Shockingly. I know. I can't. I'm sorry. The person who sent that in, but literally, I'm very fortunate. I do work with some very good athletes. Maybe not very good at nutrition. That's where I come in. But good athletes.
Good people. Well, Lee, thank you very much for coming on the Enhanced Performance podcast. It was being insightful as ever. Great speaking to you, mate. And yeah, it's been a great help having you part of Paul Craig team. And I hope a lot of more of my athletes, fighters, and everybody goes to you for their nutrition advice. Make sure you follow Lee at Box the Science Nutrition on Instagram and all the other socials. And Lee, thank you very much, my man. Peace out. Stop.